This morning's scripture is taken from the Psalms, Psalm 90, and just one verse this morning, and it's verse 12. So teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. Good morning. I should say Happy New Year. I haven't seen you since the beginning of the year, and I guess we had service here on the 1st, and it was the 2nd, and we didn't meet or physically meet last week, and so we're kind of getting back into the swing of things. So, and this message that I'm going to bring this morning, or share with you this morning, is a thought that I had that I wanted to share with you as a new year began, and so the title is, Where Do We Go From Here? Right? We've been through a lot. The past 2 years have been something none of us have ever experienced before, and what do we do now? You know, how do we manage and hope to do things different? Some of us are well, maybe not us, but I know that there are some that are big into making New Year's resolutions, and today is the 16th, and by now some of them have already gone by the wayside, right? And you know, but maybe some are still on, and we're continuing to work through them. And people make all kinds of resolutions, you know, things that they're going to do differently this year. But if your heart is not in it, if you're not motivated by something other than just a good thought, chances are they're not going to stick around. But there are some good things that can be said about New Year's resolutions. You could maybe choose to spend more time in prayer, or spend some more time with family, or things like along those lines. Some of us need to commit to spend more time at the gym, you know, kind of a thing. And but those are the kind of things that don't last, right? Life is so busy and has a way of getting in the way of our plans, and so. So that's it. You know, we are 16 days into the new year, and for many, I would guess that already those life is getting in the way of those resolutions and the things that we've done. In those 16 days, 384 hours have ticked by, or 23,040 minutes have passed, and this will kind of make sense as I go along, but this is kind of where I'm going in this message. And actually, this message is, and I just want to make this a disclaimer, this is a message that was prompted by a message that I heard someone else preach. You know, Pastor Louis Giglio of Passion City Church in Atlanta, Georgia. I just love his messages, and this is one that I had heard and recently reheard again, and just was very impactful. And so this is what kind of prompted me into bringing you this message here. And some of the illustrations, especially in the first portion of this message, are his illustrations, and so you can't credit me with them. And if you don't enjoy them, don't write him a letter. Don't tell me, right? So anyway, the setting of this is centered around Psalm chapter 90. Psalm 90 is unique in that it's the only psalm that we have recorded by Moses. I can't imagine. I don't know how in those days, or this is a long time ago, did someone go and clean out Moses' house and find in in a drawer somewhere. This was written down somewhere and decided, oh, this needs to be remembered or whatever. How does that? I'm not sure how that happened. And I'm not sure that's even matters, right? The fact is that Psalm 90 is a psalm of Moses. Actually, it's a prayer. It's entitled "A Prayer of Moses," and we find that that's significant, right? And as you read through this psalm, and we're not going to take the time to look at that. I really want to focus on verse 12 because I think that is the crux of this idea or of Saul or Moses' message this morning to us, and the rest of the psalm kind of builds into this idea that we need to. The prayer was to that God would teach us to number our days, that we could have a heart of wisdom. We don't know when Moses wrote this particular psalm. We know that Moses wrote songs, and some of them are recorded in the book of Exodus and Numbers. There's some poetry in there that's attributed to Moses as well. But this is the only one that remains a psalm. David didn't write this, or Korah, or one of the others that are prominent in the book of Psalms. This is the only one here from Moses. But even while we can't know exactly how or when this was written, you can infer, and I'm going to take the privilege of doing that this morning, or this message is going to revolve around that idea. You can come away with a pretty good idea of when Moses put this together and when he prayed this. The clues point to the fact that this happened and Moses wrote this while the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness for 40 years because of their sin. We can narrow this down, and I think this really fits and makes sense, and we'll get into this a little bit later, that this happened after the golden calf incident. You know the golden calf incident, when Moses went up on the mountain and met with God and was up there for 40 days and 40 nights. And while he was up there, the Israelites were wondering if Moses was ever going to come back. And so they decided to convince Moses' brother Aaron to build them a god that they could worship. And he fashioned a calf out of their earrings and their nose rings and their other jewelry and all of that. Moses eventually came down off the mountain and saw the abominable sight, and God was sorely angry at the Israelite people. Chapter 32 talks, Exodus chapter 32 talks about that. And then we get to Exodus chapter 33, as God, in the aftermath of what had happened in the golden calf incident, and what the ramifications were to the Israelite people as they would move forward. They were kind of at that point and say, how do we move on from here? Where do we go? How do we pick up and go back to some semblance of normal? I should probably not say that, because my message revolves around the fact that nothing is normal, right? We know that from our daily lives. There isn't anything that's just plain ordinary in our lives, but I'll get ahead of myself. And then in chapter 33 in Exodus, we find out in verse 1, God tells Moses to continue on your journey. He says, "Depart, go from here, you and the people whom you've brought up out of the land of Egypt, to the land which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, to your offspring I will give it." And then in verse 2 says that God continues to speak, "I'm going to send an angel before you, and I'll drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites." And then we get to the problem in verse 3. He says, "Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go with you." That was a problem for the Israelite people. That certainly was a problem for Moses. Moses interceded. We have in the second portion, the middle portion of chapter 33, the intercession of Moses on behalf of the Israelite people. And, he pled with God that we can't go without you leading us, without your presence there. And he makes this whole case about that. And then at the end of chapter 33, we find out that because God had an issue with the Israelite people and their sin, he couldn't go with the people any longer because they were, as Exodus says, they were a stiff-necked people. They were entrenched in their sin. Just add in that we are a stiff-necked people. You, as much as you or my friends, are a stiff-necked people as well. And God could not, because he was a holy God, live amongst the people because of their sin. And so that was the issue, why God could not go among the people, because they were a sinful people. Well, we find, where do we go if God can't deal with sin? We certainly are sinful people as well. We don't like to think of ourselves like that, but we also are that stiff-necked people. As a result, anyway, Moses had a problem as well. How do I meet with God if God's not willing to come and be amongst the people? And so he took a tent and took it outside the camp, outside of where the people was, and he set it up wherever they were going on their journey. And he called it the tent of meeting. He would go outside the camp and go away from all the people, go to some place where he could meet alone with God. Well, the people found out, and they would all gather around when they saw Moses leaving the camp. They knew that he was going to the tent of meeting, and they would stand around outside and watch, and God's cloud would come down and sit on top of the mountain, or not on top of the mountain. He probably was on top of the mountain, but he'd come down and sit on top of the tent while Moses was in there. And it says that God met with Moses as if a man face to face. Can you imagine how awesome that must have been? And so it was there that Moses interceded for the people. He daily. I don't know. The Bible doesn't tell us how often he would go out there. We do know that when Moses left the tent, Joshua, his underling, would stay there while Moses was gone. Right? I assume that's because they didn't want people going in there into where God was, but so in my mind, I'm guessing, or I'm thinking that Moses went there regularly, maybe once a day, maybe even more than once a day, to meet with God. As I was thinking about this, I thought of a movie that I had watched, or that we had watched, and I don't know, maybe you've watched it. It's been out for a couple years now, but it's entitled The War Room, put out by the Kendricks brothers, and it's about a lady selling her home, and and the dealings that she had with this real estate agent, and this lady would kind of took her under her wing as they were going through the selling of this elderly lady's home. And eventually they got around to seeing all the rooms, and this one particular room was this lady's favorite room. And it ended up being a closet. But in this closet, there were things on the walls and a seat inside the closet, and it was her prayer room. Right? It was what she called her war room, where she went to do battle with the Lord, and she went in there daily. And I was thinking about, that's kind of what the tent of meeting was like for Moses. The place where he went out to deal with God, to work out this leading God's people, this stiff-necked people. And then at the end of chapter 33, we have the incident of when Moses pled with God and asked him to show him allow him to see him, to allow him to see his glory. And God allowed that to happen and hid Moses within the rock, remember? And then God came down and actually walked in front of the place where Moses couldn't see his face, but he could actually see his back. And God's glory went, and we're going to hopefully come back to that if I have enough time to get around to that. So the message, we're on this journey. We began this journey on January 1st, right? We marked that as a new year happening in January 1st. I told you that we're 16 days into this journey, but it's actually a pretty long journey. In the next, whatever days we have left, 365 minus 16, what is that, 339 days left that we've got to travel around the sun. We're making this trip that is 584 million miles around the sun. Can you imagine? 584 million miles just ticking away as we stand here and talk. And in the next year, we'll make that journey. Some of us haven't been out of York County, right? Yet alone thinking that we're going 584 million miles on a trip. And that's the distance it will take to make one trip. The Earth will make one trip around the sun. And we're 16 days into this journey, and we've already traveled 25,600,000 miles in that journey. We've got a ways to go, but 25 million miles in 16 days, that's not too bad. You would think we're making pretty good progress, and we haven't run out of gas. We haven't had an accident, and, this is going pretty well. Have you ever been on a journey with someone who's oblivious to the journey? Well, I don't know. Maybe this is new to you, and the fact that you've never thought about this idea that we've already traveled 25 million miles in our journey. What have you seen in the 25 million mile journey? Right? Maybe we've been oblivious to that journey that's going on. But I was thinking about going on a trip somewhere. Maybe going on vacation, and no fault of their own. I'm going to use my children as objects for this part of the lesson. But their interest is where we're going, where we're going to end up. Right? They're not so interested in all the things that are happening on the way. Maybe they'll get bored, and typically Jerica is reading a book or doing some crafts or something like that, and isn't so interested in all the sights that you see, and they're interested in getting to where we've gone. But there are even people more oblivious to the journey that we're on, right? You can take somebody to, you've gone out and you've gone to dinner, and in half an hour later you can say, where did you go for dinner? Well, I have no idea where we went. We went there, had a hamburger, and they just are oblivious to the journey. I don't know if there are some of the people that you travel with or that you hang out around that just don't have a clue. They don't need to have a clue. Right? They just want to get there and be a part of that, and then I'll kick in and do the things that I want to do. But the journey, they miss the sights. They miss the journey. And so Moses is speaking to us in this: don't let us go onto this remarkable journey and be oblivious to the potential of walking with Jesus or traveling with Jesus as our companion, as our guide. Most of you know, or many of you know, that I wasn't supposed to be here this morning. I'm supposed to be in Israel this morning. And our trip to Israel had been postponed. We were supposed to be there from the January 3rd to 19th, I think is what, so we were supposed to be coming home on Wednesday this week. And, so I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be in, since today is the 16th, we would be in Jordan this morning and looking at the sites that are in Jordan. But can you imagine um, going on a trip like that and just being oblivious to everything that's going on. I had Beth dig out this is our travel book. We picked up this book because we're planning on going to Israel, and you can see that Beth has done the job. You can see all these post-it notes on here. These are all the things that are on our itinerary of places that we're to go, and so we've been taking this book with us, and while we're driving anywhere, Beth is turning to a new page and reading about the things that we're going to see while we're there. We just kind of want to be prepared for what it is. We don't want to miss. I don't know this for certain, but I'm assuming that this is a trip of a lifetime. I don't think I'll be making this trip again, but I'm going to Israel, and I want it to to be a wonderful trip, and I don't want to miss the sights. Can you imagine going on a trip and just ignoring your trip guide? And it just so happens that Dr. Walker is our trip guide going on this trip. But can you imagine and just throwing out the itinerary of the book and going and never leaving your hotel room? What was the point of that, right? We don't want to be oblivious. There are three main points to this message. And this first one is that nothing is ordinary. Nothing about life is ordinary. You are not ordinary. Moses says, teach us to number our days. Teach us to hold on to the miracle of life and not lose it in the oblivion or downgrade it to merely ordinary. Right? May we not take every day and just think of it as an ordinary day. Right? You are not ordinary. You are not average. You are not accidental. You are a living, breathing miracle sitting here in the pews today. You're an act of the Almighty God. You are unique and not accidental, but created and here in this very moment and on this very journey for a purpose. God has planted us in an extraordinary universe as a backdrop so that we don't miss or forget that we are not ordinary. Now, I don't know how many of you I'm sure that most of you have had this opportunity, but I don't know how many of you appreciate it the way I do. And as I was thinking about this, I thought back to my days of working at the church camp. And, you go someplace like that out in the mountains, and you're away from the hustle and bustle of city life, right? You can get away from all the lights and the things that are happening out there. It just so happened the other night, I don't even remember what night it was, but the other night the electricity went out at our home. And I think it was last weekend with the storm that went on. But anyway, we were in the middle of sitting in the living room watching TV, and the lights went out. And which meant that the light outside, the street light, also went out, and it was so dark, right? And you get used to the light, right? And but being at camp, I can remember that we would often, as a staff, find our way up to the ball field and lay on a blanket and just kind of lay there and look up into the sky and look at the stars and just be amazed that we're a part of this universe, at least the universe that we could see. And so on a clear, dark night, we go up there, and sometimes when you go up there, you could clearly see the Milky Way galaxy if it was just turned just the right way, and you imagine and you know that we are part of that, and it's just an amazing thing, and you can get lost in that and all that. The Milky Way galaxy that we are part of is a barred spiral galaxy. I don't know if that means anything to you, but if you look at a picture of it, and this is actually a scientist's rendering, we've never actually been outside of the galaxy to look back on our galaxy to see what it looks like, right? And but their projection of what it looks like a spiral, just floating around up there in space. And at the center of that is a large cluster of stars that form a bar, and it's very dense in the middle, and all of that. Our scientists believe that within the universe, and I have no idea how they come up with this number, that there are between 100 and 200 billion other galaxies in the universe. Well, I don't know how you can know that, because I don't know how they know where the other side of the universe is to know that they've counted all the, so I don't know. But we're not here to debate that or whatever, but they're thinking, can you imagine 100 to 200 billion other galaxies? Our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, is 100,000 light years across in size, right? 100,000, we can wrap our heads around 100,000, pretty big number, but light years, I'm not sure we can fully comprehend. A light year is how fast you can traveling at the speed of light, and light travels at 5.88 trillion miles per second. That's pretty fast. That's faster than Daryl walks, right? So in a year, in 365 days of traveling at 588 trillion miles a second, it would take you 100,000 years to reach the other side of our galaxy, from one side to another. None of us are going to be around to make that trip, right? Actually, we're on a bigger trip than that. We've never been outside of our galaxy, but we know that the Earth sits about 2/3 of the way outside of the galaxy, between two spiral arms of the Milky Way galaxy, into a section that scientists have claimed the galactic habitable zone. It's a place where there aren't many space objects. We can live here in relative peace, not having to worry about colliding into a star, colliding into other planets or asteroids, and all that. Actually, we could spend a whole morning just talking about that bit, and how life is not ordinary. Our planet Earth is not ordinary. It was fashioned in such a way that we could exist here, that we could live here. There are 200 billion stars, so the scientists estimate, within the Milky Way galaxy, and one of those stars, our sun, is the center of our solar system. And the Earth is just one planet of countless other planets in the solar system, but scientists have found no other planet like Earth. There are a number of factors, of things that allow habitable human life as we know it to exist here on Earth, that all happen to be happening at the same time, at the same place, and and when you dig into all the things that are necessary for all that to happen, and for life to sprout here, as some scientists think just kind of popped into being, is just incredibly, the odds of that happening are incredibly astronomical. It wasn't until, now most of us, right now, at this moment, and don't do this, you could pull out your phone and you could pull up an image of what the Earth looks like. Well, how do you know what the Earth looks like, right? It's a picture somebody had taken. Actually, we haven't had pictures until man first went into space. Just so happens, and I don't know what I'm supposed to think of this, but Daryl and I share the same birthday. I was born on February 20th. Now, he was born, what year did you say, Daryl? 47? Yes. 1947. I was born quite a few years later, 1962. But I was born on February 20th, 1962, and in Harrisburg. And at that point, my father's name is John, and so I was named after my father. But when I was born, I didn't have a middle name. And when the nurses were figuring out what to write on the birth certificate, they said you have to have a middle name. I don't know. Maybe they had rules back then. I'm not sure. But My mom had no idea what to call me, but February 20th, 1962 just happened to be the day that John Glenn blasted off from our Earth and took the first trip around space. And so I was named John Glenn. And so my middle name is Glenn, and so that's how I got my middle name. But so it was after 1962 that we were able to have a picture of the Earth. I don't know that John Glenn had a camera with him and was able to take a picture on that trip. But if you pull up an image of Earth on your phone, most likely the most recognizable image that we have was taken on the mission of Apollo 17. And that image is the one that is most recognizable, and it will make your jaw drop. When that image came back to Earth in 1962, after during Apollo 17, it made men stop what they were doing and just stare in awe at the beauty of what they were seeing. We miss the things of this journey, right? And we know that our planet, there are other planets, and we have found scientists that look into these things and do these things during our day. Thousands of planets outside our solar system that revolve or don't revolve around a star or whatever. They found thousands of these planets, but none of them come close to the conditions that Earth has. If you just look at the planets in our solar system, can you imagine? On the planet Mars, the average temperature there is minus 80 degrees. Right? It's cold this morning. I've heard many of you saying about how cold it was. Right? You're coming in with your jaw chattering and all that. I can't imagine my wife's hands being out in minus 80 degree temperature. Her hands are just so cold all the time, but that means she has a warm heart, right? If you travel to Venus, the other side of Earth, if you will, the average temperature on the planet Venus is 804 degrees. That's a little warm for my taste. I prefer the cold weather, maybe not quite this cold, but I prefer winter and the cold weather. I can always put a coat on if I need to, right? I don't like it when I can't take off any more clothes and I'm still hot. But the average temperature here on Earth is a comfortable 59 degrees. Now, where do you find, how do you figure a planet with just that temperature, right? And we have a moon out there, that circles our Earth, and the moon has a purpose other than just looking pretty on an October night, and the full moon comes out, right? It's just one of those big super moons, and looking at, you can see the man in the moon and all the craters and things. It's actually got a purpose. One of its main purposes. Now, we could talk about tides and all that, and that is a wonderful purpose, and actually plays a big part into ruling the day and the nights here on Earth. But the biggest issue with the moon, if the moon was not there, our days would probably last about 4 hours long. Well, till you get your hair dry in the morning and you go to Starbucks and you wait in line for your coffee, it's time already to go back home and to start thinking about going to bed, right? In a 4-hour day. That's not very practical, right? On the other hand, we don't want a day that lasts, a year to us, right? That's too long, right? You get up and go to work, and a year later, can you imagine the 5 o'clock shadow that you would have in a 365-day work day, right? And be a long day coming until you got to Saturday when you can sit down and take a rest. But 24 hours seems to be appropriate, and God designed it that way. It's not ordinary. Nothing is ordinary. You know, the Earth is moving 24,900 miles in circumference. And it takes 24 hours in that 24-hour day for it to make one revolution around its axis. And so if you do the calculations, that means that at the equator, the Earth is moving 1,037 miles an hour. So every moment of every day, while we're sitting here, while we're standing here, we are traveling around 1,000 miles an hour, hurtling through space. It's amazing that we don't have to hold on, right? We aren't thrown off and floating out into space. This is an amazing planet that God has put us on. It's not ordinary. The Earth, while it's traveling 1,000 miles an hour around its axis, is also orbiting around the sun. It makes a 584 million mile orbit around the sun. I already talked to you about that. It takes 365 days to complete that one orbit. And so that means that it's traveling 67,000 miles an hour going around the sun. So while we're spinning 1,000 miles an hour on the Earth's axis, the Earth is actually moving 67,000 miles an hour going around the sun. And the sun itself is revolving around the galactic center, the middle of the galaxy. It will take a cosmic year for our solar system to make one revolution around the center of that galaxy. It will take a cosmic year for the Milky Way galaxy to make it one trip. Will take 230 million Earth years for us to make that one trip. I dare to say that we haven't got there yet. And none of us are going to be around for that trip either. But our galaxy, as it's revolving around the center of our galaxy, is moving at 514,000 miles an hour as it orbits around there. I don't know about you, but that's not ordinary. That may be ordinary for us, and many of us will consider it ordinary. I don't need to think about that, but I find it amazing. Well, you could say there is ordinary. You know, on Tuesday I have a hair appointment, and I'll go and sit, and the hairdresser will cut my hair, and but you can tell your hairdresser on Tuesday afternoon after they're done that they did a pretty good job of cutting your hair, of dressing your hair, moving at 1,000 miles an hour, right? Or can you imagine walking out with your Starbucks cup of coffee? I'm traveling at 1,000 miles an hour and I haven't spilled a drop, right? Pretty amazing. The second part, the second point here, and I need to finish up, and I'm only on point 2, is that we have this massive opportunity. A lot can be realized on our trip. We can't be in a hurry. We can't be spouting off these New Year's resolutions that we'll never keep. They weren't important to us. We need to find out what is the opportunity that we need to look at the itinerary. We need to look why it is that we're here, right? The only way to do that is to spend time with the Creator, to spend time with our God. God has created each of us for a purpose, and we are here today in the year 2022, right here, right now, for a specific purpose. Do you know what that purpose is? Why has God created you? Why has God put you here? Why has God put you here in this earth, in this year? Why has God brought us through 2 years of COVID-19 and who knows how long more? Right? Couldn't he have just skipped that? Couldn't he have put us in, another place or another time, or when this is all over, when I don't have to worry about whether or not I'm going into some shop and do I got to put a mask on or not? Right? You are here for a purpose. God has created us for that. And there's an itinerary, right? Just like we have an itinerary for our trip. Can you imagine going on this trip, I can't imagine going on our trip just to Israel without an itinerary and seeing all that we need to see. And I know that we're not going to see everything that we should be able to see. Mike keeps telling me about all these things that, if we had time, we'd be able to go here. Well, don't tell me that, I don't want to know that there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to miss, right? I want to know what it is I'm going to see, but you need to take your time, as long as it takes, to find out what it is that God's plan for you is. It's taken me a long time in my life, for God to convince me that I'm supposed to be standing up front in a church, bringing his message, his truth, to a group of people. I kind of feel like I've had that calling all my life, or all my adult life. As I look back, I find tidbits of, people nudging me in that direction, but it's taken a long time for me to get there. But what is it? What is your plan? And God wants you to know what that plan is, because he doesn't want you to miss any opportunity. He doesn't want you to be oblivious. The last point is that there is one thing essential on this trip. I don't know how you are when you plan, when you pack. My wife, God bless her, I am just so thankful. I don't know what I would do without Beth, to tell you the truth. But when we go on a trip, I don't need to worry about whether or not I've got enough clothes, whether or not I've got the right clothes. She takes care of all that, right? And when I get there and I realize that, I don't have my hanky in my pocket, I can go to Beth and say, hey, where are the hankies? And I know that she brought the hankies, right? I know that they're there. I just don't know where, but I can go get them, right? And because she's got all that figured out. She's got all that mapped out. I don't know, in her mind, in her mind's eye, she's got this list. She's great at doing lists. She's got this list, and everything is checked off, and we don't, it's rare that we get to where we're going, and we get there and say, we don't have that, right? Or, I should have thought about bringing that. It's rare that we do that. But there's one thing that's essential. And Moses here in this verse communicates that to us. It's not that we need more time. It's not that we need new circumstances. God, get us out of this COVID-19. Put me in another year, right? It's not that we need more money. It's not new traveling companions. It's not a new job. And it's not more stuff. We got too much stuff as it is. We don't need another piece of luggage. Now, some of those things may be involved during the journey, but they aren't the essential thing. So what is essential? What does the verse say? It says, teach us to number our days that we might gain a heart of wisdom. Wisdom is the essential element for this trip around the sun. In Proverbs chapter 9, we find out that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And so Moses is saying to us that wisdom, fear of God, not the internet, not a new phone, not a faster computer, not a new job, fear of God, wisdom is what we need. No one's out there talking about, I need more fear of God, right? They're talking about, I need a new phone, I need a new wife, I need a new husband, I need a new job, I need a new car, right? I can't tell you any time that I've heard someone say, I need more fear of God, right? But that's what we need for this trip. Moses is telling us that a heart of wisdom is what we need most. What we need is the fear of God. Now, fear of God is the recognition of who God is and that we stand in awe of his glorious presence. We trivialize God, don't we? We think of God as our buddy, that is there when we wake up in the morning and we can say hi, good morning, or whatever. And if I get a chance, maybe I'll read your book. Kind of a thing. But I sure do want you there when I got a problem and I pray for it and I need the vending machine in the sky to pop out, whatever it is that I need, right? We tend to trivialize who God is. Do you realize that God with his breath, created that universe. That galaxy that's spinning around out in the sky. It tells us in Psalm chapter 33, chapter 33, that with his breath, the starry hosts fill the universe. He breathes out stars. I would think our God is a little bigger than what we make him out to be. You know, do we really believe that God is that big, that he is that God? So what is essential on this journey? I want to please God. I want to honor God. You know, this is all fear of God kind of thing. I want to glorify God, the God who gave me that breath. I want life to reflect God and not men and their opinions. I'm a servant of the King of Kings, and I serve at his pleasure to do his will. So we need wisdom to make the right decisions, to maximize this journey that we're on around the sun. God wants each of us to have the ability to do just that, to teach us to count our days. I'm not a good counter of days, but I'm asking God to teach me to count each and every day, to make the most of each moment, each opportunity that's afforded to me. You know, there's 91 days till Easter. You're saying, oh, Easter already? 91 days. I have 231 days till I leave for Israel again, or hope to anyway. There are 343 days until Christmas. I know you're saying I already got my Christmas wrap purchased. You know, I even have some gifts stored away in the closet. I'm ready. You know, 349 days till we'll be standing here again in beginning of 2023, thinking, what did we do last year? You know, and what should I have done different to making those New Year's resolutions? How many days are left on this journey? The Bible tells us that 80 days or 80 years is the average life expectancy of man. Some of you are on borrowed time. I'm just saying. Right? How will you make the most of this next day, this next year that you're on? I'm getting ready to turn 60. February 20th, I'll turn 60. So until I turn 80, that means I will have 7,300 days left in this journey. I've already passed 21,900 days in my 60 years. I only have 7,300 left. What am I going to do to make the most of those days? You have 80 years, so the Bible says, you know, the average man has 29,200 days. And none of us are at zero. Some are on borrowed time, as I said, but those days are dropping by, you know, just as quick as we could say. We were at dinner the other evening, and we were talking about this idea that, can you believe that 10 years ago, it seems like it was just yesterday, right? Some of you have children. Some of you have teenagers, and you say, "Boy, I wish I'd get out of this," you know. And you know, but those days are just dropping by, and there will be a point in time when you say, "I wish I was back there again. I had done things different." Don't get into that thought. Today is the day to make up your mind that you're going to make every day, every moment count. Last thing I'll leave you with is that in James 1:5, we're talking about what is essential on this trip. Moses tells us that wisdom, or the fear of God. In James 1:5 says that if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. If you lack wisdom, if you need wisdom to make every day count, God is willing and able to give you that. Nothing else matters or will make a difference. Only the wisdom to manage each moment of every day. Our Heavenly Father, the maker of the universe, who by the very thought and word created everything, each star and galaxy breathed out by you, May you teach us to number our days and fill our heart with wisdom and honor and reverence of you. Show us the plan for each of our lives and give us the strength to say no to those things which are not part of that plan. And give us wisdom, true godly wisdom, that we will make the most of each and every day that you have granted to us.